The auction asterisk. The market was loud, dirty, and full of strange creatures. Jake stood at the edge of the slave auction, arms crossed, his jaw tight. He hated this place. He hated everything about it. The cages, the collars, the way the crowd laughed. While lives were being sold, he wasn't here to buy anyone. He had just come to sell broken tools and old engine parts. But somehow, his feet had led him to the center of the auction square. On the stage, a fat alien with yellow skin shouted prices. Next. Up! A rare catch. She comes with a child. Healthy, strong bones. Good worker. 2 guards pulled a woman onto the stage. But she wasn't a human. She was something else. Her skin was pale lavender, almost glowing under the lights. Her eyes were wide and silver, filled with fear. She held a small child, maybe 3 years, old close to her chest. The child was thin, shaking, and silent. This one sold herself. The auctioneer laughed. All she wanted was food for her child. Now, that's loyalty. The crowd roared with laughter. Jake didn't laugh. He stared. The woman looked around, terrified, like a deer trapped in a burning forest. Her clothes were torn. Her feet were bleeding. But she didn't let go of her child. Starting bid 50. Credits. No one raised a hand. 40. Come on, it's a package deal. Still no hands. The crowd started shouting jokes. She's too skinny. She's broken. Throw her to the guards. The woman flinched. She held her child tighter and whispered something in a language Jake didn't understand. 30 credits. The auctioneer barked. Now annoyed, Jake stepped forward. Without thinking, he raised his hand. I'll take her. The crowd went quiet. The auctioneer blinked. You human? 30 credits? Jake nodded. I'm not here to play, he said. Give me the papers. The alien shrugged and hit a button. A collar light on the woman's neck flashed, showing. The change in ownership. She's yours now, he said. No returns. Jake walked up to the stage. The woman looked at him, unsure. She stepped back, her arms around her child. I'm not going to hurt you, Jake said softly. She didn't understand. He pointed to himself. Jake. Then he pointed to her, trying to ask her name. She didn't speak. She just looked down. The child peeked out from behind her arm. Big silver eyes stared up at Jake. Not afraid, but curious. Jake reached into his bag and pulled out a protein bar. He unwrapped it and offered it to the child. The child looked at the mother. She nodded slowly. Tiny hands reached out and took the food. The child ate like he hadn't tasted anything in days. Jake felt his chest tighten. He turned to the guards. Let them down. They're coming with me? They walked back through the market together. The woman limped. Jake offered her his arm, but she refused. She kept her head low, always checking behind them. Jake brought them to his small ship, docked near the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and safe. Inside, he gave them water, blankets, and a soft place to sit. He sat across from them, letting them rest. The child fell asleep almost instantly. The woman stared at him for a long time. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, Sarah. Jake looked up. Your name? She nodded once. Sarah. He smiled. Nice to meet you. Sarah. She looked down again, unsure if she should smile back. Later that night, Jake couldn't sleep. He stood outside his ship, looking up at the stars. He had no idea what he had just done. He wasn't rich. He didn't have a big crew or a powerful ship. He worked small trade routes, fixing machines and minding his own business. Now he had a scared alien mother and her child, sleeping in his cargo hold. But something inside him had changed the moment he saw them. He had seen slaves before. Lost people. Broken families. But he had never seen someone willingly sell herself just to feed her child. That wasn't weakness. That was strength. And she deserved more than chains. Jake took a deep breath and looked back at the ship. I'm not your owner, Sarah, he whispered. I'm just a man who saw someone worth saving. The child's silence. The ship was quiet the next morning. Jake sat near the engine room, wiping oil from his hands, thinking about everything that had happened the day before. He had brought an alien woman and her child into his ship, complete strangers. He hadn't even planned it, but he didn't regret it, not even a little. Inside the sleeping quarters, Sarah sat on a blanket with her child curled beside her. She gently brushed the boy's white hair back from his face. He was still weak. He hadn't spoken a single word since they left the market. Sarah looked at the food Jake had given them. She took a piece of fruit and held it near the child's mouth. Eat, she whispered in her language. The child opened his mouth slowly and chewed, but his eyes were hollow, empty, like something inside him had shut down. Jake walked in quietly, carrying a small bowl of warm soup. I brought breakfast, he said. Sarah looked up and nodded. She still didn't smile, but her eyes were softer. Then before Jake knelt down and placed the bowl near the child. What's his name? He asked. Sarah looked at him. She hesitated, then whispered, Nilo. Jake smiled. Nilo, that's a good name. The child didn't react. He just looked at the floor. Jake frowned. He hasn't spoken yet, has he? Sarah shook her head slowly. Jake sat back on the floor. I've seen this before, he said quietly. Children who've seen too much, lost too much, they shut down inside, like they're hiding in their minds. Sarah touched her son's back. He was taken once, locked away. I gave myself so they would not take him again. Her voice trembled, even though her words were calm. Jake felt his chest tighten. He looked at Nilo, then back at Sarah. They heard him? Sarah didn't answer, but her silence was louder than any scream. Later that day, Jake opened a small storage crate and pulled out a tiny toy robot. It was old, scratched, but it still worked. He brought it to Nilo. Look, he said, pressing a button. The robot walked in a circle and beeped twice. Nilo didn't react at first, but then just for a second his eyes followed it. Jake noticed. He moved the toy closer. You like it? Still no words, but the boy slowly reached out and touched it. Jake smiled. It's yours. Sarah watched from the corner, her hand over her mouth. A tear slipped down her cheek. The boy hadn't moved like that in weeks. That night, Sarah sat beside Jake near the control panel. The stars passed slowly outside the window. Jake handed her a warm cup of tea. We'll reach the outer moons in 2 days. There's a quiet place there. You'll be safe. Sarah looked at him. Why are you helping us? Jake stared out the window. I've seen what the galaxy does to people who don't have power, he said. I used to think it wasn't my problem. But then I saw you on that stage, and I couldn't walk away. He turned to her. You were still fighting, even when you had nothing left. Sarah looked down. I thought I had sold myself, but now I'm free. Jake nodded. You're free because you chose to protect your son, not because I paid 30 credits. Sarah's eyes met his. I still don't understand you. Jake smiled. Most people don't. Later that night, Jake heard a noise from the sleeping area. He peeked inside. Nilo was sitting up, holding the toy robot in his hands. He wasn't talking, but he was slowly pushing it back and forth across the floor. Sarah sat nearby, watching him with wide eyes. Jake whispered, That's good. Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. He remembers what it feels like to be a child. Jake leaned on the wall, and one day, he might speak again. Sarah looked up. You have already given him more than food. Jake looked at Nilo, who now gently smiled. You gave me something too, he said softly. A reason to care again. But outside the ship, floating far behind them, A small dark drone hovered quietly in space. Its red sensor light blinked once, then disappeared into the blackness. Someone had found them, and they were not alone anymore. A hidden mark asterisk. The ship drifted through space, heading toward the quiet edge of a forgotten system. The stars outside blinked slowly, far from any major colony or patrol route. Jake sat near the pilot's seat, checking the radar again. Still clear, but something didn't feel right. He couldn't explain it. A strange pressure sat in his chest, like a quiet warning dot in the sleeping quarters. Sarah helped Nilo clean up after their small breakfast. The boy had started eating on his own. He still didn't talk, but his eyes were brighter now, and he smiled when Jake entered the room. Progress, Jake had called it, but Sarah was still afraid. Not of Jake, never of him, but of being seen. She knew they were being watched. She could feel it, and she also knew something Jake didn't. Something inside her was dangerous. That night, Jake was repairing a cracked pipe when he heard a soft cry from the sleeping bay. He dropped his tools and rushed in. Sarah lay curled on the floor, her hands shaking. Sweat covered her skin. Her breathing was shallow. Nilo sat near her, silent, holding her hand. Jake dropped beside her. "Sarah, what's wrong?" She tried to speak, but couldn't. Her body trembled as glowing lines began to appear on her back and shoulders. Strange, silver markings like ancient tattoos, but they pulsed with light. Jake stared, shocked. What is that?" Sarah opened her eyes slightly. "Don't look," she whispered. "Please." Jake shook his head. "You're in pain. I can't ignore it." He lifted her gently and placed her on the soft bedding. The markings grew brighter as he wiped her forehead with a damp cloth. "What is this, Sarah?" he asked softly. "What did they do to you?" She closed her eyes. "It is not what they did. It is what I am." Jake paused, then quietly said, "Show me." She turned over, revealing the full pattern across her back. It looked like a symbol, circular and glowing faintly, like living metal burned into her skin. It was beautiful, but terrifying. "This was given to me at birth," she whispered. "All in my bloodline wear it. It means we carry light and healing. But when my people were captured, it became a target." Jake touched it gently. It pulsed. And then his hand glowed. He pulled it back in shock. "What was that?" Sarah looked at him. "You touched the source. My light responds to kindness." "That's how it works." Jake stared at his hand, the light slowly fading. "You're more than just alien royalty," he said. "You're something sacred." She shook her head. "No, just a mother. Hiding." Jake stood up and began pacing. "But if this thing lights up, can they track it?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, it sends a signal when I'm weak. When I lose control." Jake's heart dropped. "Like what just happened?" She nodded again. "And someone could be coming right now?" "I don't know how close they are," she said quietly, "but I feel watched." Jake ran to the cockpit and scanned the system again. Still no ships. Still no warnings, but he trusted her. She hadn't been wrong yet. He returned to the room. Nilo was asleep now, curled beside Sarah like a tiny protector. Jake looked at her and asked, "Why? Didn't you tell me before?" "I didn't want you to be afraid of me," she said. Jake shook his head. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of losing you." Sarah's lips trembled. "No one ever said that to me before," she whispered. Hours later, Sarah finally slept. Jake sat in the dark, watching the radar. His mind raced. If someone came for her, he would protect her, even if it cost him everything. Far behind them, deep in the shadows of a dying moon, a signal flickered to life. The drone that had tracked them days earlier activated again. It sent one word in a cold, silent frequency: "Found." And across the galaxy, in a dark control room, A bounty hunter's screen lit up. He smiled without emotion. Tracker active. Target is glowing again. He stood, grabbed his gear, and loaded his weapon. Time to collect. The ship floated quietly above a moonlit planet. Inside, all seemed calm. But Jake couldn't sleep. Something was wrong. He sat in the cockpit, staring at the radar. Still no ships nearby. Still no alerts. But his gut told him the peace wouldn't last. He looked over his shoulder toward the sleeping bay. Sarah and Nilo were resting. The boy's tiny hand clutched his mother's sleeve, and her breathing was soft and steady. She looked peaceful. For once, Jake wished it could stay that way. Hours later, Jake made a decision. They couldn't stay in space forever. He plotted a course to a nearby forest world, Iron's Hollow, a quiet, green moon where traders often went to hide or rest. No government patrols. No records. Just trees, caves, and silence. He sent a message to an old friend with a small outpost there. Need shelter. Urgent. 2 guests. The reply came quickly. Cabin is yours. Coordinates sent. Don't lead trouble. Jake sighed. Too late. They landed by sunset. Birds flew across the purple sky, and wind rustled through tall blue trees. The air was clean, warm. Safe. At least for now. Jake led Sarah and Nilo along a small path to the hidden cabin. It was simple, but strong metal walls, a sealed door, food supplies, and fresh water. Sarah looked around quietly. This place is calm. Jake nodded. You'll be safe here. He helped Nilo sit near the window. The boy had started humming small tunes lately, soft, like music from a dream. He's healing, Jake said. Sarah smiled. Because of you. Jake shook his head. Because of you. I'm just helping. That night, Jake checked the outer sensors one more time before sleeping. Nothing. Still nothing. But deep in the woods, something moved. A dark shape stepped quietly through the trees. Tall, armored, silent. The bounty hunter. He had no name, just a mission. His gear was built to detect energy pulses, and Sarah's glowing mark had led him. Here like a light through fog. He saw the cabin through his scope. One signature inside burned bright. She's here, he said into his wrist. Inside the cabin, Jake sat by the fire, cleaning a knife. He didn't trust peace. He had learned a long time ago that the quiet always ended. Suddenly, a faint beep from the motion sensor. His heart jumped. He stood, walked to the console, and checked the screen. One figure, moving slowly. Coming from the trees, he didn't hesitate. Sarah. He called. She stepped out quickly, Nilo behind her. We have to move, now. She froze. They found us? He nodded. One figure. Could be more. Sarah looked down at Nilo. He can't run far. I'll buy you time, Jake said. You take him out the back path. There's a small cave. Hide there. I'll come for you. Sarah looked into his eyes. Don't die. Jake smiled. Not today. Jake grabbed his rifle and slipped out the front door. He moved fast, circling the cabin from the side, staying low, hiding behind trees and rocks. Then he saw him, the bounty hunter. Full armor, pulse gun on his back. Moving like a machine. Jake raised his weapon and fired a warning shot. Stop right there. The bounty hunter turned slowly. Human, he said coldly. This isn't your fight. Jake stepped forward. She's under my protection. She's marked, the hunter replied. She belongs to the syndicate. She belongs to no one. The hunter raised his weapon. Jake dove behind a tree as the shot burned the bark. He fired back, hitting the hunter's shoulder. Sparks flew, but the hunter didn't stop. He advanced, slow and steady. Jake ducked again, rolled, and fired twice more. One shot hit the chest plate. No damage. Then he ran, back at the cabin, Sarah helped Nilo through the trees. She looked back once and saw flashes of light in the woods. She held her son tighter. Then she heard it. Footsteps behind them. Too fast. Too close. The bounty hunter had circled around. He stepped from the shadows, weapon pointed at Sarah. Stop, he growled. Now. Sarah stood in front of Nilo, shielding him. Jake burst through the brush at the same moment, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. He saw the hunter saw the gun aimed at Sarah and didn't think. He tackled the man with all his strength. They crashed to the ground. The rifle flew from the hunter's hands. Jake punched. The hunter hit back harder. Jake's vision blurred, but he wouldn't stop. Not while Sarah and Nilo were watching. Not while they still had hope. Then, suddenly, a blast of light. The hunter screamed. Sarah stood tall, her hands glowing white-blue. She had activated the mark. The hunter stumbled back. Blinded. Jake kicked him to the ground and grabbed the rifle. He aimed. You're not taking them. The hunter froze, then disappeared into the trees. Vanishing into darkness. Jake dropped to his knees, breathing hard. Sarah ran to him, touching his face. Her hands still glowing. She began to heal him silently. Nilo sat beside them, holding Jake's hand. Then finally, the boy spoke. Papa? Jake looked at him in shock. Sarah began to cry. Jake whispered, Yeah, I'm here. The safe house. The forest was quiet again. After the fight, Jake, Sarah, and little Nilo returned to the hidden cabin. The doors were locked, the windows sealed, but the fear inside them still remained. Jake leaned against the wall, breathing hard. His arms and chest were covered in bruises, and the cut on his forehead had opened again. Sarah helped him lie down near the fire. You fought for us, she whispered, pressing her glowing hands against his chest. You would have done the same. Jake replied, wincing. I did, she said softly. Nilo sat near them, holding a blanket. For the first time, he wasn't silent. He looked at Jake and said, You're Papa now. Jake blinked. He hadn't expected the boy to speak again, at least not so soon. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She looked at her son. Is that what you want? Nilo nodded. He keeps us safe. He's strong. Jake smiled, though pain tugged at his ribs. You can call me whatever you want, little guy. The boy crawled over and hugged him gently. Sarah placed her hand over both of them. For the first time in years, she felt like she belonged. That night, the wind blew through the trees. Jake couldn't sleep. He sat near the front door, his rifle by his side, watching the trees for movement. Sarah joined him with a warm drink in her hands. He might return, Jake said quietly. Sarah nodded. Or send others. We'll be ready. She looked at him. You should leave. They want me, not you. Jake shook his head. I didn't save you just to run away. You didn't save me, she said. You stayed. That means more. Jake stared into her silver eyes. We're not leaving each other, he said. Not anymore. The next day, Jake reinforced the cabin walls. He set up extra traps around the trees, tied fishing lines to cans, and placed mirrors in the woods. To spot movement? He wasn't a soldier, but he had been hunted before. He knew how to survive. Sarah, still tired from using her healing light, spent the day resting. But her body healed slowly, naturally now. The mark on her back glowed faintly, but not as dangerously as before. That evening, she helped Jake clean his wounds again. When her fingers brushed against his skin, he flinched, not from pain, but from warmth. You don't have to do this, he said. I want to, she replied. You gave me back my son's voice. Now I give you back your strength. In the corner, Nilo played with the toy robot Jake had fixed. He hummed quietly, smiling. He was no longer the silent, trembling child from the slave market. He was a boy. Again, a free boy. Later, As they shared a meal near the fire, Jake asked Sarah, "Where would you go if no one chased you anymore?" She thought for a long time. Then she said, "A place where my child can run, laugh, and sleep without fear." Jake smiled. "Then let's find that place." But as night fell again, a soft click echoed from the forest. Jake froze. He motioned for Sarah to stay low and crept to the window. One of the tripwires had snapped. Something was moving. Jake grabbed his weapon. Sarah picked up Nilo and stepped into the corner. Silence. Then nothing. No sound. No shadow. Just stillness. Jake didn't trust it. He whispered, "They're testing us." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "They're not machines. They're hunters." Jake set a clay trap by the door and returned to his post. "We're not running," he said. She touched his hand. "We stand together." But deep in the trees, behind a thick root system, the bounty hunter from before lay hidden, watching through his scope. His shoulders still burned from Sarah's energy. He smiled coldly. "They're not afraid anymore," he whispered. Then he pressed a button. A red light blinked on his WR. Ice-T beyond D. Far above the planet. In deep space, a Syndicate warship received the signal. More were coming. Asterisk. The last stand. Asterisk. The wind in the forest had stopped. Everything was still. 2. Still. Jake stood outside the cabin, his rifle ready, eyes scanning the trees. The tripwire had been tripped, but no one had entered the clearing. No sound. No movement. Something was wrong. Inside, Sarah rocked Nilo gently. The child was nervous again. He clung to her tightly, sensing the fear in the air. "Is it them?" he whispered. Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, little one. Stay close to me." Jake whispered into the small radio by his ear. "They're close. I don't know how many." No response. His friend from the outpost had promised backup, but Iron's Hollow was far from everything. No help would come in time. This would be up to them. Suddenly, from the dark woods, a red flare lit up the sky. Jake ducked as the flare exploded above them. A signal. A warning. He shouted, "Get down!" Seconds later, blaster fire tore through the air. The ground near his boots exploded. They were under attack. 3 dark-cloaked soldiers stormed into the clearing. Elite Syndicate trackers. Their armor shimmered, and their guns burned bright. Jake fired first. One shot hit the lead attacker. The chest. He stumbled, then dropped. The other 2 kept coming. Inside the cabin, Sarah held Nilo close. "Stay here," she whispered. "No matter what happens." She kissed his forehead and ran to the front door, eyes glowing faintly. Jake gritted his teeth, taking cover behind a tree. He looked up. Sarah was standing in the open. "What are you doing?" he shouted, but she didn't answer. Her hands began to glow. Then her entire body lit up with a soft, white-blue energy. The Syndicate soldiers hesitated. They had seen this before. They remembered the last time she used it. One soldier raised his rifle. Sarah raised her arm. A beam of light shot out, striking his weapon. It exploded in his hands, knocking him to the ground. Jake finished the job, firing 2 clean shots into the third attacker. Silence. The clearing was full of smoke and light. Jake ran to Sarah. "You could have been killed," he said. "I had to protect you." "We protect each other," he said, grabbing her hand. Then a voice from above. Very touching. They looked up. A dark figure floated down from a silent ship hovering above the trees. The bounty hunter. His armor had changed sleeker, darker. A scar across his helmet mocked his earlier defeat. "I gave you a chance, human," he said coldly. "Now I take her. And the boy." Jake stepped forward. "Over my dead body." The hunter raised a weapon. Sarah stepped in front of Jake. "No," she said firmly. "You'll have to go through me." The hunter smiled beneath his helmet. "That's the idea." He fired. Jake pushed Sarah aside just in time. The beam struck him in the shoulder. He dropped, screaming in pain. Sarah screamed too, but it wasn't fear. It was rage. Her body began to glow brighter than ever. The mark on her back pulsed like a heartbeat. Nil ran outside just as the light exploded from her body. Nitrogen monoxide. The boy shouted, "Stop!" The hunter paused, his weapon flickering. Sarah turned slowly. Her eyes now shined pure white. "You will not hurt my family," she whispered. The ground beneath the bounty hunter cracked. His armor sizzled. His legs gave out as Sarah walked toward him, her feet floating above the grass. "I am not yours," she said. "I never was." Then, with a final burst of light, she struck his chest. The blast knocked him backward, into a tree. His armor shattered. His ship sparked and exploded in the sky, and the forest went silent again. Jake opened his eyes slowly. He was still alive, but barely. Sarah dropped to her knees beside him. "You came back," he whispered. "Always." Nilo held his father's hand. "You're safe now," the boy said softly. Jake smiled faintly. "For now," Sarah said. "But they'll send more." Jake grinned. "Then we'll be ready." That night, the stars above were peaceful again. But in the quiet cabin below, something had changed forever. They weren't just survivors. They were a family. And no matter what came next, they would stand together. The choice asterisk. The forest was calm. The stars above blinked softly, as if watching over the world below. The battle was over. The bounty hunter was gone. His ship had burned in the sky, and the last of the syndicate soldiers had vanished into silence. But inside the small cabin, everything had changed. Jake lay on a bed near the fire, his arm bandaged, chest wrapped in gauze. His body ached, but he was alive. Sarah sat beside him, holding his hand. Nilo slept curled up beside them, his toy robot in his arms. The light from Sarah's mark had faded, but its warmth still lingered in the room. "You saved me," Jake whispered. Sarah shook her head gently. "We saved each other." Jake smiled weakly. "You could have run, taken Nilo, found safety. But then I'd lose something more important," she said. Jake met her eyes. "You," she finished. For days, the forest remained quiet. Jake recovered. Slowly. Sarah continued to use her soft healing light when needed, though she had learned to use it carefully now only when her heart was calm. Nilo had changed too. He laughed more. He asked questions. He called Jake Papa without fear. Together, they began rebuilding the cabin's stronger walls, hidden exits, and better defenses. But something was still coming. A final decision. One morning, a sleek white ship landed near the edge of the trees. It was not syndicate, that it was not a hunter, that it was one of Sarah's people. Tall, silver-skinned beings stepped down from the ramp healers, protectors, and elders from her long-lost world. One of them, a wise elder named Vale, bowed deeply to Sarah. "Daughter of light," he said, "we have come to bring you home." Sarah stood still. Jake, holding Nilo's hand, said nothing. Vale continued. "Your signal reached us through the stars. We feared you were gone, but you are alive, and your child carries great light. He must be raised in safety among his kind." Jake felt his heart sink. He had always known this day might come. Sarah turned to him. "They're offering us safety." Vale raised a hand. "Him?" he asked, pointing at Jake. "He is human. We cannot protect him in our realm. Our rules are strict. He must stay behind." Jake nodded slowly. "I understand." Sarah looked down. Nilo gripped Jake's hand tighter. "I don't wanna go." Vale spoke gently. "The child is powerful. He will grow into a beacon of healing, but only if he's protected." Sarah turned to Jake. Her voice trembled. "What do we do?" Jake took a deep breath. "I told you once," he said. "You don't belong to anyone, not even me." He knelt beside Nilo and placed a hand on the boy's chest. You have a light inside you. Maybe it belongs to the stars. But no matter where you go, you'll always be my son. Nilo's eyes filled with tears. But I don't want to leave. Jake looked at Sarah. This is your choice. I won't stop you. You deserve peace. He deserves a future. Sarah's eyes burned with emotion. She turned to Vale. If I go, she said, do I return to being only light? Do I forget this life? Vale looked uncertain. You would live among your own. The pain of your past would fade. The war would be behind you. She paused, then looked back at Jake. No, she said. Vale's eyes widened. I choose him. I choose this life. I choose to remember. Jake stood speechless. Vale nodded slowly. Then the child stays with you. But know this, the syndicate will hunt again. They will not stop. We won't either, Jake replied. The white ship lifted off quietly, disappearing into the sky. The choice had been made. Not because of duty. Not because of blood, but because of love. Months passed. The cabin became a home. The trees around it grew taller. The defenses were stronger. Jake built new machines. Sarah taught Nilo how to use his healing light in small, careful ways. They planted food, read stories, laughed. At night, they sat by the fire and watched the stars. One evening, Nilo looked up and asked, will they ever come back? Jake looked at him. Yes, he said. But when they do, they'll find a family. Sarah leaned against him. A strong one, she added. Nilo smiled. And above them, the stars seemed to shine just a little brighter.